Hey folks, it's Michael with the CCERP podcast, Cypress Creek Ecological Restoration Project. Listen to our other podcasts. Hope you enjoy this one too. Hope you enjoy the others. We've talked to some ecologists and people who help with natural streams and creeks and people in the local area, and going to be doing a lot more with ecologists and birders and local parks and people who enjoy the creek and history, ancient history, all kinds of things related to our creek and ecology in general, which is a broad subject. And join us over on our Facebook page. Get involved in the activities and follow along. Do whatever you can. So one thing we got to think about when doing what we do with the creek, cleaning up, removing invasive species, enjoying it, going out for hikes together, having community, keeping things clean, is of course we got to think about ourselves and our movement. We got to not neglect that. Seems to be something neglected. Instead of, a lot of people just focus on picking up the trash or whatever. But we're part of that whole equation and situation, and we're part of the ecology, not separate from it. So we need to think about ourselves too, and how we move, and what's the safest way to do it, what's the most efficient way to do it, how to move through the trails and in the woods and in the creek and everything. So that's another thing we need to talk about, and we'll be talking about that in future episodes, but we're going to talk about that also today. So our guest today is Tim Maddox. Tim, would you say hi?
Hey, this is me. I'm Tim.
Can you tell folks about yourself, please?
Sure. My name is Tim Maddox. I am becoming an old man. I'll be 50 come March.
Sweet, congrats!
So
the big 50.
Thank you.
But that's good. We need the wisdom. It's like you don't get the wisdom of how to move and how to recover from injury and what people should do when you're 20. That's hard-earned stuff you have when you're older.
Yeah, I've made a significant amount of mistakes and experiments and come by knowledge in that way. But as background, I'm a MovNat Level II certified. Kellen Milan did the instruction, the certification. We did that here in Tulsa.
Right.
I'm also an instructor at Holistic Self-Defense, and cool. I teach natural movement and help people to increase their movement toolkits.
Okay, cool. Anything else?
Help them to become just my day gig is software development. So
sweet.
I'm often at a desk or on a conference call, and becoming more aware of natural movement has helped actually in my career, because it's changed the way that I approach my work. In terms of physical positioning and standing versus sitting, and just the overall approach.
So, that sounds like something we could get into in a future episode on its own.
Yeah, it's a whole beast in and of itself. But when I take a look around, I see like the quality of movement and the base that people are operating from, and I can see how it projects into the future, and I would like to try to make my future be healthy and happy and not fragile and withered. But like you say, that's another that's another story for another day.
And that's exactly ecology there too. People might not think about it like that, but um, ecology studies the things that live in a certain area, the biotic and abiotic, as we've talked about in a previous episode, the living and the non-living, how they interact all with each other. And that's actually happening in our workplaces and homes. So it's not that people are incompetent movers, it's just the way we're molded by furniture and a lot of human-made things. They were made with convenience in mind and weren't made with the full ecological picture, the full picture about human biomechanics. And so, unfortunately, it causes dysfunctions in our structure and our movement. It's something that is kind of like imposed on us. It's not because we're defective. And then we don't have the good movement role models that we used to, like thousands of years ago, when people had to be very careful because they didn't have hospitals. They couldn't go mess around like some people can today. So, yeah. So, of course, that's what Tim's saying. Is that correct, Tim, or am I misspeaking
definitely.
for you?
Are you familiar with the work of Katie Bowman?
Yeah, I was about to mention her. It's like, exactly, movement ecology. Great.
Yeah. So that she's been here in Tulsa. We've hosted nutritious movement a couple of times through holistic self-defense, and she's brilliant.
Yeah.
But what she's talking about is the way that our physical environment is actually changing the way our bodies grow. And the diversity of our movement, or lack of it, really is causing a lot of the maladies that we're seeing arising in people in the office space, industrial folks. I find her work just endlessly informative.
Yeah, same.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Then part of the point she and others are making is not to be anti-technology or destroy this and return to how life was 50,000 years ago. That's not the point. The point is to do things correctly according to our human nature and not let some of the technology make us dysfunctional. It's to take control and be human instead of kind of unknowingly being affected by this stuff in a bad way.
Yeah, she talks about like outsourcing our strength and our our personal knowledge of how things work to things like our shoes. If we are constantly in an elevated platform with a cushy sole, then that is shaping the way that we walk, the way that our foot is going to grow, the way that all of the muscles and the tissues and the joints and bones up the chain react to being inside the shoe constantly. And one of her things is about being barefoot and to generate strength from the ground up. Because anywhere that we have a weakness in the chain, that's where we're going to see the maladaptation, where we're going to see the issues arise.
Yeah, and then we'll be talking today about how to take care of some of that, so that's good. But let's back up a little bit. A few things. Let's clarify, if we could, for people. So three things I was thinking about. Well, actually, we can do like four, maybe really quickly. So you mentioned this MovNat stuff, and you mentioned this natural movement stuff thing, and this clean guy and Katie. Like, can we talk about those like briefly one at a time? Um, like, what's this MovNat thing you're talking about?
Sure. So MovNat is it's a movement philosophical system. So it incorporates all aspects of human movement. So it's locomotion, it's walking, running, um, swimming. It encompasses combatives, rolling, jumping, everything that you can do with the human body um, as a fundamental movement pattern. MovNat incorporates into its philosophy of how to approach human movement,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the brainchild of Erwan Lecour, who's a Frenchman who has developed the system, and it has grown in the past 10 years to be an international movement now. And there
Mm-hmm.
are certifications happening throughout the world with people that are learning how to be a better human mover. And one of the things that it helps you do is it helps you identify maybe the things that you didn't even know that you needed help with.
Yeah, it happened with me.
Because, yeah, because it involves climbing and carrying, and the proper way to approach all of those endeavors so that you create a sustainable and efficient movement package as you go through life. And their philosophy is that first we are practical, and then we move to efficiency, and then we move to mastery. So practical would be that you're able to do a thing. Efficiency is that you're able to do it longer, and mastery is that you're able to teach other people.
Mm-hmm. And then for folks to develop the idea of the human movement and what it encompasses, it's like stuff we've done throughout our human history and that we still do, some stuff without even much thinking about it. But if we're out in the woods and we're let's say carrying a bag of trash from along the trail to a pickup point, or it could be that, or ancient folks might have had to carry a big hunk of deer back, or whether then or now you need to carry an injured person somewhere to save them, like the flooding we have a lot here in Houston and Cyprus. We need to be able to carry people to help them out, but you know, having the strength on our own and the competence and the confidence helps us individually. And then carrying, it's like whenever people have kids, up to like 10 years old, what do we do? What's happened all through human history and will always happen? We carry them. So this is like natural, like the MovNat thing covers this. Like, and the point is, how do we do this so we can do it safely and efficiently and like be able to do it in the long term and not get hurt, have knee problems, back problems, how to make ourselves, these MovNat helps us make ourselves stronger and do things in a biomechanically appropriate way for a human so that we don't have these injuries and we can do more, help ourselves, enjoy life, help other people. Or like throwing, a long time ago, throw a spear, now throw some keys from one person to another, or in a flood or something, throw something to someone else because you can't get too close. Throw and catch, climb ladders, climb trees. You're out in the woods, you want to get some trash, climb the tree. Or there's a flood and you want to help someone, climb a ladder. Things like that. Crawling, like firefighters have to crawl through tight spaces and dangerous situations. So we want to make sure they can do it. They want to train for it and be able to do it biomechanically well. Or like when I'm out in the woods picking up trash, I'm crawling like pretty much every single day. All kinds of crawls. So there's,
the part of the MovNat philosophy is the be strong to be helpful.
Yeah.
And so the idea is that you're building skills, but you're not building skills to just build skills.
Yeah.
The encouragement is to do something useful with them. You have the ability to help another person. You have the ability to carry something further. You can run farther because if you're practicing well, you're efficient and you're smooth in your movement. So you have the ability to be helpful. And I'm going to murder the name, but it's George Hubert, who's started Method Naturale, which is an influence to Roland LeCoeur. He was in a town, and there was something like a flood event.
Yeah.
And he saw that people were not able to climb a little wall.
And this was like back around like World War I, World War II, even then.
Yeah, exactly. So people died because they were trapped, essentially, because they didn't have any options. They didn't have any movement options in that space.
Mm-hmm. They didn't know how to, and unfamiliar with it, and untrained.
That struck him deeply, and that was kind of the genesis for him to get started to be helpful, because he didn't want that scenario to continually play out.
I mean, he was a French military officer for folks, and I'll put a link in the show notes to him and to MovNat so folks can learn more. But and then what about that gives people a good beginning idea of MovNat. Then they can look in the show notes for more information. And it stands for Movement Naturale. And what's this natural movement stuff you're talking about? Pretty much the same thing, or natural movement different, or like what do you mean?
I think that MovNat has like copyrighted natural movement or something, like if you capitalize it or something that's they own that space. But natural movement to me is probably a broader category. It would definitely overlap with a lot of what MovNat works on in their philosophy, but natural movement is just informing your body about its mechanisms and its maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
It's I don't know. It's kind of one of those all-encompassing things that's hard to describe in maybe just in a sentence or two. But it would be more to the point of just knowing what you're capable of, what your body should be able to do, and then bridging the gap.
Yeah, so like digging into our human potential and what we've done for thousands and tens of thousands of years to move through our environment.
Yeah. And I think that we've lost a lot of the connection between like our ancestral movement, the way that people spent their days in times past. It was when we were more agricultural. We probably spent a lot more time doing work and a lot less time doing leisure activities or seeking comfort.
Yeah, it depends. Like in some primitive cultures, I've read about the way when they were studied. I think as long as you have it's pre-agricultural, and you have an ecology that's not been degraded too much by some ecological destruction and all that, but human tribes in certain areas, they're so efficient at getting food that I think it only takes them, like, I don't know, 10 or 20 hours a week to get enough food to feed them, and then they can spend the rest of the time doing whatever else. We'd have to look into that more, but that's what I've read.
Yeah, I guess I'm not like super informed about it. I probably have like a romantic notion of people slaving away all the time, like feudal systems or
I think that's the way we're taught a lot, and that's the conception that a lot of people have about ancient life. Whether it's right or not, that's what people believe.
Yeah, but I also know that they made time for festivals and for community to come together, and they had long festivals, like over days and stuff, where it was just nobody's working because we're all at the festival. But so they must have had time for those types of things, those kind of community celebrations.
But okay, so and then briefly, so that tells folks a bit about MovNat, natural movement. We get an idea of what those terms mean. What about, you mentioned this clean guy or something? Could you tell us about like him?
Aaron?
Colleen, who certified you level 2?
Yeah, Kellen.
Kellen, oh yeah, sorry.
Kellen Milan.
Kellen.
He has a I guess it's a website and a recurring kind of series called Movement Parallels Life. And the thing that I took away from him was more about the artistry of movement. And that, like, it's okay to be that weird person that's doing that weird thing, societally weird.
Because you're ahead of your time.
If you are really exploring that space, I mean, if you're just doing it to be weird, that's probably not
right.
super great. But if you're doing that weird thing to gain more knowledge, to be able to be a better informed mover, then do it. And he's an incredible mover.
And for some folks, the word mover to them, until they get that down, they might think more of like he's an incredible exerciser, an incredible athlete, very mobile and agile. But
so I guess what if I say incredible mover, I mean that he is strong and supple. That he's able to apply strength and resistance and relaxation in the places where he needs it, at the time that he needs it, in the way that it needs to be done. And at the level that he works at, then you can start to see the artistry of, I'm not just trying to flex my biceps, but I'm trying to do it in a way that that provides, I guess, more input to the self in terms of the biological feedback that you get through movement. That it's not just like I gotta tear this muscle so it can relax and then build more muscle on top of that. There's a lot of stuff beyond just creating bulk in your body. Mm-hmm. Being strong, that's the first line of defense, right? But there's depth to it beyond just now I can lift more things.
Yeah.
There's a learning that happens within the body, within the mind, by creating harmony between that strength and the ability. And that again is where that artistry comes in.
And a good example of that, folks might not know that everyone, like pretty much everyone knows Bruce Lee, but Bruce Lee weighed 120, 140 pounds. He was 5'6". Jackie Chan's like 5'6". So.
Yeah. There's a million ways to be strong, right? And those are great examples of people that maximized what they had to use.
Mm-hmm. No, folks,
Bruce Lee.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
And
so
folks,
I was just going to say Bruce Lee didn't make an imposing physical presence unless he started to flex.
Yeah, because from what I've heard, he had a big influence on the bodybuilding world, because I think very few or no one had a six-pack or was cut as he was.
Right.
And so bodybuilding after Bruce Lee just totally changed from what I've heard.
Is it like striation that he demonstrated so well that other people wanted to?
Yeah. Just to have a six-pack that cut like that, or when he shows himself in the films flexing his muscles, and you can see like every single one.
Yeah, they're all there.
And some you never even knew were in the shoulders or the arms or whatever,
Yeah, definitely. And he did that at an expert level.
Yeah, world class. But
he was also a dancer.
Oh yeah. Tell us about that.
Well, so like his early upbringing in China, part of what he spent his time doing was dancing, and he was very good at it, from what I understand, and it was something that he practiced, and I think that speaks to the scope of what he looked at in terms of movement.
Yeah, I think he was like a cha-cha champion of Hong Kong or China or something like that.
Yeah.
But
if he didn't discover martial arts, there's no telling what path he would have taken.
Yeah, right. But so how do you pronounce his name again? Kalan? I keep butchering it.
Kellen.
I got Colleen in my head. Okay, Kellen. I gotta look in the mirror and repeat that 50 times. So Kellen. And he's a MovNat instructor, level 3.
Yeah.
On the master.
He's a master instructor, and I think he was one of the original core group.
Okay.
That started with Irwin.
Okay. And then I can put a link in the show notes to his info if folks want to look. And Katie
Yeah.
Bowman. Katie Bowman's got a lot of good podcasts and materials that we'd recommend people look at to help move better and function better out on the trails and in our
Yeah.
general
Just
modern ecology.
just to work on like hip alignment and standing
Hmm.
is that's a rabbit hole that just keeps on going and going and going.
Yeah.
But there's a whole lot more to it than that. But that I think that would be a great place for folks to start.
Yeah. But yeah, there's a lot more to simple things like walking and running and standing and breathing than folks probably realize until you start digging into it and seeing the right and
Yeah,
wrong and best practices and how it fits in with everything else we do.
definitely.
It's complicated. So, do you still have a little more time to talk, or do you need to like
Yeah,
head on
yeah,
out? Oh, cool. Um, because we talked about your background, and then I wanted to just define and describe some of these terms you use to make sure we all know what's going on and what we're talking about. But
sure.
of course, um, the point of the podcast is, this episode is talk about moving on our trails, um, how to do it safely and efficiently, and what to think about, thinking about nature and everything. So we've got that important background covered. Of course, we could talk a lot more about the background, but let's get into like the movement aspect for folks and um, what they might do to move safer and more efficiently on the trails, and how they might
Yeah,
think about, learn what they don't even know they don't know. Just like on, I don't know where this came from, but um, it's on Wikipedia and people can look it up. But there's like 4 stages of learning or competence, as people call it. So there's the 4 stages: unconscious incompetence, where we don't know that we're not good at something. We're not even aware that it's something to think about. Then there's conscious incompetence, like it's like, whoa, I don't know this, or whoa, something new to learn, or whoa, I was thinking I knew how to do this, but I'm doing it wrong. And then
right.
there's conscious competence, where we're learning how to do it right. We're training. It takes some mental effort to do things right, and we got to observe ourselves doing it. We're getting help. Um, then there's the last stage, level 4, unconscious competence, where it's become second nature or habit, and it's so ingrained that we can perform something like cognitively or physically correct without even thinking about it, and we can like modify it to a situation a little bit. Um, Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, so that's that's the mastery level.
Yeah.
I find most of my time is spent in that second and third level. That
Yeah.
you know, there's a lot of stuff that I see that blows my mind that people are able to do, and then there's stuff that if I think about it and concentrated on it, that I can be effective in that movement.
And plus, the second and third are so fun and interesting to me. It's like I like being in situations where, well, I'm doing this wrong. I have something to learn, or
Yeah,
um, I'm like getting better now. It's like I don't want to be in a situation where I, like being 1 and 4 and nothing but, be good at some stuff, and be unaware of how bad I am at some other things. I want 2 and 3 because they add so much more to life.
right. And if I think if you adopt the right attitude, that 2 and 3 are that's the place where you're going to expand both your movement competence and also your mental competence, because you're going to have to check yourself. You're going to have to get humble at times
Yeah.
to realize that my approach maybe wasn't correct. or the things that I thought was the right way is not the right way.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes you have to, you get to that third level, and then you maybe see somebody else, and then you're like, nope, I need to go back to that second level again and lay down the fundamentals again.
Yeah,
But
I thought I was
guess
in three, but I was really in one.
Yeah. What is it? There's something about like the newness of your knowledge is it's like an inverse ratio to your confidence. Like
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
it has a name to it anyway, but that we can see that play out often. But when we're moving in nature, so the thing that I guess that I would have people start with is just posture and alignment. Because if we're crooked and moving through nature, we're probably going to be creating issues for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So
walking, running, carrying, bicycling, dog walking, picking up trash, crawling, posture, alignment.
All of that, yeah. It's the foundation. So if people are looking to get more movement, I would encourage folks to work on that foundation. Learn about your feet, learn about your ankles, learn about how to activate the arch in your foot, and how you might be dumping weight in your feet because your knees are crooked, or you have particular problems in your hips that are pulling on things in your knee that manifest as something that hurts in your foot.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the system of systems approach. All of these things are connected together, and the more that we learn about the individual items and then how they work together at a fundamental level, at the basics, that to me is where long-term competence is going to be developed.
Yeah.
There's not a 6-week program to be excellent mover in nature. It's
lifetime,
a long-term thing.
Yeah.
And there's people that can provide that information, but assimilating it is usually the long-term process.
Yeah. Just like some people say, someone can, using a metaphor for like a journey, someone else can show you a map of where to go to get somewhere, or where to go on vacation, and they can show you pictures, but you got to take the journey yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
And one problem in the culture is like there's too much in education and in the culture. Some aspects of it, because Western culture is very complex and is multifaceted, but one aspect of the culture, as you see, comes up in like education, where you have math and physics and biology and literature, and they're all separate. So there's just too much emphasis on analysis. We need to go back to what the ancient Greeks knew, what primitive people know, what we know when we're children, is that we got to analyze and synthesize as well. You got to look at the individual things, and you have to put it back into the big picture and connect. See how things relate.
Definitely. It's bodily integration of all of those those different modalities, all the different spheres of knowledge. I agree.
And then, correct me if I'm wrong, Tim. Maybe you're different, or you know some people that are different. But in myself and everyone I've seen, I know no one, and I know I can't go running with only my feet or only my legs. I know whenever I go running, my whole self is there. Is that your experience
Right.
too?
Yeah. Yeah. You need everything to go the distance. And so one of the things that I'm involved in is doing some ultra distances. And that whole community is an interesting community from a movement perspective.
Yeah. How so?
Not everybody is a wonderful mover,
Mm-hmm.
but
Understand.
They use the skills that they have at a high level.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I would like to see is to bring more toolkit, more tools into their toolkit, so that as they're moving along, they can recognize that, okay, the way that I'm holding my feet is turning my knee out, and then that's actually tweaking my hip and causing that pain in my back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. From experience, my own experience in seeing people, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But
the thing that they have is grit.
Yeah. Yeah, true.
They make so much happen on grit. It's just that if you ever go to an ultra event, it's amazing to see the level of will and just get it done.
Mm-hmm.
Confidence that people bring to the sport.
And that's a sad thing about our culture, is that the kind of worship of pain and suffering and pushing yourself through it. It'd be better if people, because they could go farther and faster if they do things more biomechanically correct and would just bounce along, instead of destroying themselves and making a wreck of themselves. But if they have to do something that involves suffering, because I can understand that, because I like pushing myself, but I try to do it in a smart, biomechanically appropriate way. But if they want to do something like that, then add more complex features to the run, go further, stuff like that. Because I've read about some people that in a race, so some people are doing maybe 100-miler, and one person's running along and they're just suffering and feeling horrible, and then someone else comes and passes them by and they're just smiling and laughing, and the person who gets passed, because they're suffering, they just get wrecked psychologically. To see someone enjoying themselves going by, it just kills them.
It's like a unicorn passing them. Like, how can that be?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can never finish. They're feeling okay, and I'm suffering. I want to die.
But there's an orientation towards time and distance that is considered the most valuable metric. And I think in some people's minds that's causing problems that manifest in pushing through something that they should have held off on, or knowing from the beginning that they weren't moving right, and creating these issues along the way. And there's the "suck it up, buttercup" is a common phrase, which it does get people to the finish line, and people, there are a lot of tough individuals out there that grit through that, and it's it's amazing to see happen. But in the long term, I'm not sure that that's the most beneficial thing to be, part of your life.
Mm-hmm. And then really quickly, since I said my whole body runs when I'm running, so folks get some meaningful idea of what I mean by that. And so it's not just some airy-fairy phrase. Kind of part of the idea is that all power generation when you're running comes from the core, not from your feet. The feet help, of course. It's important how you place them and how you use them, but you can have the best legs in the world, but if your core is weak, you will not be able to run. And then your arms. Your arms are important in their motion in providing feedback and energy in your stride. They're not irrelevant to how you run, or the fascia going all through your body. With the way we are, from what I have read, we absorb some energy and then release it, and that helps us as we're running, and that helps us move along. It's not sheer muscle. So
right.
There's some things
we use some elastic properties that are, in the joints and the tissues. And it's not well, I'll take a gamble here and say that it's not cardio that causes most DNFs. It's pain that develops that people can't get through. And that pain
causes most what?
Oh, DNFs, did not finish.
Oh, okay.
For a race. But it's usually the pain of how their movement is manifesting in their bodies over this, over a long-term event.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I think there's a lot of potential for people to learn some skills to use more of their body in running.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're trying to pull it off with just your legs, you're missing a lot.
Yeah. And that's the same thing with hiking, walking. So when we're out on the trails, when we're going up and down stairs, when we're walking in an office building, if we know how to do it biomechanically correct, or know how the whole of our self works, we can do it much better and safer and more efficiently.
Yeah. I guess the first thing would be to look at your hips and how you're utilizing your hips. If you can maintain
as the song says,
pelvis.
The hips don't lie.
That's so true. But a lot of people will run with a tilted pelvis, and that's just setting them up for problems through the whole chain.
Mm-hmm. And so it's not totally separate, because of, as I say, some things in the culture and the way we're educated, the way our minds are trained to function. A lot of people might think of running as totally entirely separate from maybe deadlifting or doing a clean and jerk, but there are relationships, and how we use our hips is one of them.
Oh, sure, yeah, and a lot of that cross training can help both things. Mm-hmm. Learning how to run well is usually part of anybody who is taking on a higher level knowledge of training, and also those runners that want to run better, cross training to learn how to deadlift. Mm-hmm. And learn those mechanics and learn those points of alignment, how your back should be, where your head should be, what you're doing with your hips, and how you bring that load into the body or onto the body. that's all very informative. To there's a synergy between all of that training. There's a lot of those overlapping circles,
Mm-hmm.
and the more we know, the more we know.
Yeah. And
They
the
just
more
continually build on each other.
Yeah, and the more we know, the more we can go on to learn more.
Yeah.
It develops. And so one thing folks should do when they're walking and running and hiking is to keep their back straight. Is that correct? In most situations. I mean, there's some where we want to bend it. And of course, if you're doing a forward roll, you want a bent back, not a straight back, but could you elaborate for folks on that?
So context dictates the form. So typically, if we're running across flat terrain, we want an upright posture, and we want to be pulling our legs through our hips and not swinging them around our hips.
Mm-hmm.
But whatever the context is of where you are or what you're doing, that dictates what the proper form is for your body at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
But most running, especially if we're doing road running, which is usually you have a fairly consistent surface, not a lot of ups and downs. You'll want to have that a good upright posture. And I'm trying to remember the guy's name is Danny somebody. He wrote Chi Running. And that has a lot of good information about.
Cool.
He talks about creating the column and the way that the ideal way to stabilize the body in terms of posture. But that was an informative book for me. I'm just forgetting his last name right now.
I'll look it up and put it in the show notes for folks.
Sure.
And so, have you worked with some folks and seen some issues they've had with their running and then helped them improve? And what have you done?
I have worked with some people, but primarily it's not been runners.
Yeah.
A lot of the folks that come through are maybe they're more at the ground floor level of gaining knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
But I have worked with some people, but not a whole bunch.
Yeah, and it's not that you couldn't help them. I think sometimes there's just an unawareness that they need help. I know I've seen some local high school track teams running, and I see a lot of inefficiencies and dysfunction in those folks. There's a lot they could do to improve their running technique and their overall technique as a human mover that would help them. But
there's like a time and a place for I guess sharing that knowledge.
Yeah, that's why I don't say anything. To them, I'm just a nobody.
Receptive to you stopping them on the trail and saying, "Hey, man, your foot is inverting."
Yeah, or I can't walk up to the coach and say, "Hey."
Yeah.
I don't know. I've heard that some people I know have done that though, and they've actually had some, of course, as you'd imagine, they've had some good reception with some folks and been able to help, but sometimes it's just a lot of folks will just reject it or not know that they need help or whatever.
Right. And it's, there's a lot of different schools of thought about physical education, and not everybody subscribes to, the same maybe holistic view of,
right. Yeah.
Of approaching that. And you're introducing stuff that kind of breaks up their web of beliefs, and they have to either accept that things are wrong, or they cling more tightly to what they know.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that can be a barrier.
Yeah, but so let's see. People should think about their hips, how they're aligned, their posture. How might some of that vary? The straightness of the back, positioning of the hips when people are going on uneven terrain or uphill or downhill.
Right. So you're going to need to bring more dynamic movement into utilization. I kind of think about road running as maybe like a rhythm guitar. It's just kind of always playing the same thing. It's the backbeat. But when you start to move quickly across uneven terrain, if you're trail running, that gets to be more of a broken rhythm, more of like a jazzy feel or whatever.
And we're talking real original jazz from like maybe the 30s, not the modern elevator music that's called jazz that isn't. Right. Louis Armstrong. We're talking Louis Armstrong, things like that.
Yeah. Brubeck kind of jazz.
Yeah.
And, ambient space odyssey.
Yeah, the masters. But
so what you would need to do is have this. You need more confidence about the way things work in your body. And what's accessible at the moment that you're, if you're making a striding jump from one rock to another, where do I place my foot? How should my knee be positioned? What do I do with my hips and my back when I actually make that impact, when I make that contact? How am I going to stride through? Am I jumping to the next rock? Am I setting that up too?
Yeah.
So, and you can do that. You can do that poorly and still get through. But if you want to have long-term effectiveness, you need to be more informed about how you're moving through that space.
And less risk of injury and more enjoyment.
Yeah.
More adaptability.
Allows you to do something the next day other than just walk around
with a
moaning.
Yeah, it's an interesting point you make. When you're on the road, everything's so monotone and unchanging and boring. People just tune out, and it's like every step is the same as the previous. You don't got to think about it. But good point you make when you're out on the trails. You think about where you're stepping, where you're going to step next, where you're going to step after that, and so forth, where the environment leads. You can't just tune out.
And what do you do when that step that you thought was stable is not stable?
Yeah.
And how do you deal with, okay, the rock is rolling. Am I going to roll my ankle to compensate and push, roll through that, or how am I going to approach this? And you need to know that at the moment it happens, at the split second that it happens.
And that's where we get back to the MovNat, the natural movement, and to something we haven't talked about, like the training. Well, we kind of have going from unconscious incompetence to unconscious competence. So That's one thing that a lot of folks don't do, but if they did MovNat, natural movement, they would know how to fall in numerous and varied ways. They would know, well, they would have good joint mobility, so they would not roll their ankle. It would be really difficult to do so because they would have such good mobility in their ankle and other joints, and they would have agility, and they would have body awareness and competence to be able to suddenly, instantaneously adapt. And I know I, for one, have noticed that I could not do the stuff I do out in the woods, picking up trash and everything without the training I have in movement and natural movement. Everyone's going to fall or something.
Sure.
Show me the person who says they're never going to fall, and I'll show you someone who needs to learn how to tell the truth better or how to understand the world better.
Right.
But haven't you had to use some of that, like falling,
sure.
adjusting?
The thing that I think is best is knowing how to move, how to use your foot, how to load your foot in different ways. Like instead of just the normal pattern that you might use for your running, when something shifts under you, can you move your weight and adjust your foot? Where I've just shifted a little bit of weight to my foot, I'm continuing running, and I haven't broken my ankle as a result. And that I've practiced that particular movement pattern in the lab and able to apply it at runtime.
Yeah, and that's one thing where people would learn from MovNat or from natural movement in an evolutionary sense of how people developed and how animals developed. A good thing about MovNat that not a lot of other systems have is the logical progression. And I've heard that too, like in some idea that this guy, Coach Summers, he's taught some U.S. Olympic gymnasts. It's an idea he uses as well in a system, like to some extent. So his athletes cannot move on until they've totally mastered something to the point of it being boring. He says they're begging to go on to the next 3-month cycle, but he will not let him do that until the 3 months is over, because it's not just a matter of being able to do something like once, it's having it ingrained in your nervous system, in your brain, having it like materialized in your nervous system, in your muscles, in the way they function. You got to work on that and start like with something basic. Learn how to do a forward roll when you have 2 feet and one hand on the ground, and then only 2 feet, and then jumping a little bit and rolling, and then eventually get up to heights. But it takes like a few hundred repetitions at each level, going slow and building up to be able to do it safely and effectively, and really having it ingrained and adapted, and then having complex, like adding complexity and variation to it. So it's not just like someone who runs on the street. When they run, all they can do is run on that surface in that particular way. They do not have the ability to change direction. Everyone can change direction. Yeah, I'm not saying they can't do it at all, but they can't do it well. It's not trained in them. They don't have, their joints aren't worked within the limits of their capacity.
It's a single plane of movement.
Good way to put
forward.
It.
But I'm not to rag on road runners. There are a lot of fit folks and good movers out running on the roads too.
But just add more to your vocabulary.
Yeah.
get a broader.
And I think that's where somebody would probably need supplemental movement practices if you are dedicated to one particular mode, and if it were road running, that you would probably want to supplement that and not make road running the only thing that provides you your movement nutrition.
Yeah.
That you need to move in a variety of planes, and to get upside down, to roll on the ground, to learn all of those different ways too.
Yeah. So if you love running, if it's a passion, do it. But remember that in order to be able to keep doing it and to do it well, you need that other training. So this feeds into your passion. It's not separate from it. It's part of being human.
I think about it as kind of like doing math. That you need arithmetic before you need algebra, before you need trigonometry, before you need calculus. And some people want to jump right to the calculus, but unless you are particularly skilled and have an unusual ability there, you're probably going to struggle.
Yeah, and even then, you can't do calculus without algebra, because a lot of calculus is just a fancy way to feed back into algebra.
Sure.
Stuff like that. But,
yeah. But all of those building blocks, they form that foundation. And I think that the more that we dedicate to the foundation, the more that we develop competency in our movement.
Yeah. Have there been some particular times where you've had to roll in the woods? Like, you remember some of them? You got some stories to share?
Actual rolling, like head over heels.
Yeah.
I mean, I've fallen running. I mean, that just happened. And I can't say that I've rolled while running, because I'm typically on like rocky terrain or something where the roll would not would not support what I want. I just need to stop my body from moving. I guess knowing that you're falling and having some kind of plan, like, okay, if I fall on my side, it's going to be better than if I fall on my knees. If I can get my hands out there and create a little bit of a break, that's going to be helpful. I have been able to catch myself. Like, I don't know if you've been running and you kick a rock, and that kind of sets you in kind of like a forward falling trajectory. I've been able to catch up with that and save myself a couple times. But I don't know. Have you ever rolled in the out in the woods?
You name it, I've done it. It's like,
I slide a lot.
Because for what I do, it's like I have to. Like, even out a few days ago in the woods picking up trash. I'd been out for a while, and so I was a little tired, and my mindfulness level had gone down a bit. Otherwise I wouldn't have done this, but I stepped onto a board, and normally I wouldn't have done that. I'd be thinking a lot more. I wouldn't have even stepped on it at all. However, having been out for a few hours, being kind of tired and all that, I stepped on the board, but what do we find in boards sometimes? Nails.
Right.
And it was not like the end up that the hammer hits. It was the sharp end that goes to the wood. So this board was turned upside down, and I'm out barefoot, and I stepped on this nail, but I did not get hurt and did not puncture my skin, and that's specifically because of my movement practice. It's like
Yeah.
I'm I'm barefoot, and then I'm used to it, so I'm used to with years of experience, so I'm used to getting the feedback from my feet and processing it right away. I've done,
Yeah.
being level 2 MovNat certified trainer as well, and all the stuff I've done, I'm used to body weight shifts, um, controlling my center of gravity and my weight. Um, and so, I stepped on it. I don't know, it did went into my skin like, I don't know, a 64th of an inch or a 128th of an inch or something, just a little bit, just this little prick. But of course, I pulled it, stepped off, but did not go through my skin. Whereas if I would have had shoes on and I was clumsy,
Right.
then I could very well have a puncture wound right now because with shoes, I could have stepped on it, not known it's there, put my weight on the foot, bam, it would have been right through the shoe and into my foot, you know?
Right.
But, the awareness, the weight control, um, moving slow.
Yeah.
When I'm out in the woods, that's another important thing that's part of natural movement and MovNat that I don't see other systems do enough. It's all about fast, fast, fast. But some folks know better, like Tim Larkin, who teaches some self-defense courses, um, you know, and some people who do martial arts. That's like a tradition, moving really slowly through some things. But
Yeah.
because I move in the woods really slowly, or I do some MovNat movements, some natural human movements really slowly, I'm used to that. And that's another thing that came into play in, keeping me from puncturing my foot. Or
When you have that yikes moment, you've got competency to pull that foot away and balance on the other foot. And
yeah, right, yeah, the
not,
balance.
yeah.
How could I have stood upright and not having to put my weight on that foot that was above the nail unless I had that balance in the first place, right?
Yeah.
And then what was it? Yesterday I was out picking up some trash in some woods, and this wasn't like a falling or anything, but in my peripheral vision, amidst all these fallen browned leaves, I saw this browned, old, rusted part of an aluminum can, like the top part with some metal sticking up. And
Yeah.
it's interesting that I'm walking around and moving, and because I'm so experienced with nature, I mean, not I'm as good as like a Navy SEAL or like some Native American Indian or some, primitive culture person, but I'm so used to moving around in nature that I spotted that thing right away, the color, the shape, the texture, and then so I knew not to step on it, but to pick it up. Otherwise, I might have stepped on
Yeah.
that too.
That's you make a good point about pattern recognition,
Yeah.
and that's one thing that a trail runner has to be good at in taking in data,
Sure.
be it surface and patterns, and where's the best place to put my next step or 3 steps, or does that look like something that's slippery?
Yeah.
When you're running at however fast it is you go.
Yeah, good point. That's one thing that I've noticed that I've processed and internalized and habituated is like knowing something about the stability of the substrate, the ground, just based on the color.
Yeah.
Cause if it's like a certain color, I know it's slippery mud. If it's a different color, I know it's nice, dry, supporting sand.
Yeah, I can step in. But
Yeah.
I've wondered if there's like a correlation in abilities between like people that play video games that are pattern matching video games and the ability to trail run. Like when I grew up spending a lot of time at the arcade, with those 80s video games. That was a big part of my growing up, and I just wondered if there's any correlation between people who did well at video games or just enjoyed them, and then those who later in life went on to do some trail running.
Yeah, of course, there's that whole different context of having to move yourself through an environment. It's very rich and takes a lot of practice, but yeah, in terms of the processing, that's interesting. Like reacting immediately to a different pattern. I can see the similarity there. That's interesting. But and yeah, I know there's times with the stuff I do where I think I've had enough sleep. I wake up naturally, but I go out running and find out that my brain is not rested enough as I thought, and all of a sudden I'm just minding my own business when some root hits my foot and it causes the whole earth to, it's amazing, the whole earth rotates 90 degrees. I'm just standing there.
Yeah. It jumps up at you.
Yeah, I got to stop it with my hands.
Yeah.
But
there's a definite level of mindfulness that's necessary, I guess more necessary in a natural environment, because there the possibilities of more dangerous circumstances, aside from getting hit by a car or something, present themselves. More slippery stuff, more jutting angles, hanging limbs and falling things, and all that stuff that needs to be taken into account. And if you're barefoot out on the trail, then yeah, it is a cruel and merciless teacher in terms of your focus. But you learn quickly.
And I don't think
it's like a self-educating system.
Yeah.
The more you do it, the more you learn what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah, there's a word for that too. I forget. I think it's in Montessori, where the materials teach you. They're like self-correcting.
Yeah.
And it's important because so folks shouldn't just think about, oh, I can get hurt, but the important thing is to think in a broader context, be more philosophical, and think about what this is training us to do is to be more mindful of how we move, to pay more attention to our environment. That's why I like going barefoot, because it makes me, I'm in a situation where I have to pay attention to what I'm doing. So my whole self is involved. My awareness, my mindfulness, my nervous system. It's not just some like brute muscular running thing. Like my whole animal self is involved. And then I can take this into situations of driving. So you're out running, you start to be more alert and look around and pay attention. And that in turn can help you drive better, identify things and patterns as you're driving, avoid dangerous situations in a crowd. It helps you more effectively look around, observe, and assimilate information better than you would have been able to do otherwise.
Because you're more practiced at it.
Yeah.
And it's it's like a skill that is applicable across a variety of contexts.
Yeah, it becomes an everyday, practiced, habituated thing.
Yep.
And then if you want, one thing people could do is go out with some friends, and maybe one person goes up 10 or 20 or 50 yards and the other person tries to find them, or else people go in a line and one behind the other, leaving a certain distance, and whatever the first person does, the next person has to do exactly the same thing, and so on.
Right. That's another thing about MovNat is cooperative play.
Oh yeah.
That we don't do a lot of that anymore, unless it's in some kind of sport and point-oriented, achievement as the goal. Instead of just like when we were kids, we had just fun doing stuff together.
Yeah.
And MovNat encourages that cooperative play, but probably with more implements and with more towards the idea of improving our movement and challenging the people that we know.
Yeah. So we should get out and
because it's fun.
Yeah. And then you got like, as opposed to in a gym or in a sport, when you go out in the woods and you're like following the other person or whatever, doing different things, then it's like free, spontaneous, imaginative movement and it has to be adaptable. It doesn't come up in the sports. Those are very limited. Even one where some people might think they're using their range of movement more like tennis. Well, actually, you're not. Maybe there's more range of movement compared to some other sports, but compare the range of movement in tennis to what a human can do and should do, and it's very minimal. But so anything else about walking and running and hiking that folks could benefit from?
I guess when I think about barefoot and maybe people that might want to get started with it, I think about it like playing a violin. At first, it's kind of scratchy and it doesn't sound good, and it's kind of hurtful to experience. But the more that you keep with it, the more that you're going to develop the subtleties and the nuances and be able to bring forth like more of a beautiful thing than maybe just strapping on some shoes and hitting the road. That's my personal experience. That it can be an exquisite experience given the right mindset and the right practice.
And then folks don't need to be all like afraid of it. I've been going barefoot for, I don't know, 8 or 10 years out on the trails, and I've yet to really step on any glass or a nail and injure my foot. I've even made some videos to kind of, okay, it's unfortunate that some people step on nails and glass, and I do not like that, and I feel sorry for them. But because some people are paranoid about it, to talk about that and to try to correct it and to show that if you use your eyes and are mindful, it's okay, not to attack or say anything about the people who've been injured, but because some people overdo things, I've made videos kind of making fun of that, showing myself walk on broken glass. And you know what? It's fine. It's like if it's on concrete, I'm not going to do it because the glass is going to stick up more. But in dirt, it tends to level out and get surrounded.
It's flat. And
surrounded by soil, and it's no big deal.
But I guess starting slow. If anybody is thinking about it, to start slow.
Definitely.
And be patient with yourself and progress, because it does take a while to get where it's functional.
Yeah, and there's a lot more to it that Katie Bowman discusses, and stuff I've learned from her and other folks. A lot more to it than some folks might realize. It's not just a matter of going barefoot out of nowhere. Your skin needs to adapt. It's got to get thicker on the bottom. That takes time to grow. You need to feed that with the correct nutrition. The ligaments and tendons need to become more flexible and adaptable and grow and strengthen. That takes nutrition and sleep and recovery and repetition. The muscles, a lot of muscles have been used for a while. So because they haven't been used for a while, we need to get them back into use, get them functioning, and then, and only then, strengthen them. The nervous system has to come into play. As we talked about, you got to consider the holistic person, not just some isolated like feet thing, you know. Um,
Right.
and
Yeah. It does. It doesn't just stop right at the bottom of your foot.
yeah, then it takes a while. Like some folks might be able to adapt in 2 weeks or 2 months, but some other folks might take like 2 years or 20 years to really go from where they are to being able to do a lot barefoot.
Yeah. I know I had a bunch. I had like Achilles issues when I first started, and that took a long time to get around. But
Wow.
it's in the past now.
What'd you do to get around it? Just keep going at it and running, or like any particular
Um,
exercises?
yeah, I kept running, and I found eccentric stretches, which is essentially like you get on a platform and you lower your heel.
Hmm.
Um, that stretch and then loading that. If you can get in a squat rack or something and really put a load on it if you want. But that was just one of the things that I found that was helpful.
Cool.
Um,
But yeah, and like we talked about with martial arts and math and what the coach Summers does to his Olympic gymnasts, um, go through logical progressions, taking time. It's not because it's not a matter of we're weak. It's a matter of that's what good training is, and that's how humans develop. We need to figure out where we are in terms of our foot function and go slow and smart in logical progressions from where we are to our goal of going barefoot.
yeah. And you think about, well, what is my goal? I mean,
Yeah.
if I want to be barefoot, why?
Yeah.
What is my goal? And then use those as the metrics uh, for how you train.
Hmm.
If your goal is to run faster, you're probably not going to do that out of the gate. I mean, when I try to run fast barefoot, um, I don't run as fast as when I have shoes on. Um, but that's just part of my training.
And that might be just
But
psychological too.
yeah,
Self-protection by the brain and nervous system and
yeah,
stuff.
but
Yeah.
maybe that's the level that I should be running at instead of at these higher levels, that are
Mm-hmm.
facilitated by more protection, but might be something, because usually when I run fast, I injure myself, I get a pole somewhere
Oh yeah.
or something. I keep pushing through something, but I don't tend to experience the same thing when I'm trying to be mindful about barefoot.
And then there's some Olympic sprinters and Olympic marathoners and soccer players who've um, been like started out barefoot and spent much of their lives doing that, and even some Olympic athletes who've won races barefoot. I think there's been a few of those.
Yeah, I mean there are people that have done high performance and elite level work without shoes.
Mm-hmm. And so, but yeah, so do what you need to do. Like, wouldn't recommend going barefoot on the trails right away unless you've been barefoot for a long time. Like, I can go barefoot on the trails right away because I do. But if you're used to wearing shoes, then go through logical progressions, maybe barefoot at home some. Like some people wear shoes
Yeah,
indoors. Start going barefoot
yeah,
indoors first, then in some grass, walk for a while, then maybe do some slow running, and then sprinting eventually. Get into more complex surfaces. I've heard that it helps to go on concrete because, again, that's like self correcting. The grass can be kind of soft, but if
yeah,
you run wrong, like if you don't do a heel, I mean, if you don't do a midfoot strike or a ball flat strike, when you're running on concrete, it'll hurt, from what I've heard. So concrete could be a good feedback thing that helps you get your technique down. But land.
You will you will develop efficiency, or you will stop.
Yeah. And then some folks I've talked to said they like stay on the balls of their feet all the time, and I'm like, no.
Nope. I'm a flat as a pancake guy. I'm probably like whole foot, but biased towards the ball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I do different things depending on the day and the terrain.
Whatever the terrain is. Yeah, I wouldn't do that in all circumstances, but just like a flat regular trail, dirt trail. That's probably how I'm going to go through it.
Yeah,
I'm trying to distribute that load.
Then a good way to think about it, some folks have said that running is like jumping. And if folks would just jump rope or jump up and land, you're not going to land on your heel. You're going to land on the ball of your foot and then go flat, or else like land like midfoot strike and go flat.
Yeah.
And so then if folks look at the great sprinters or great marathoners, they don't land on their heel.
Well, I think, some people have done good work as heel strikers, and they've made it work. It's not for me, and I recognize that in my body it creates issues. So I adopt this other way of doing it. But there's a million ways to go about a thing.
Yeah. I wouldn't recommend heel striking either. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. We've gone about an hour and a half. You want to wrap up, or you want to talk more about movement outdoors, or what?
I think I'm good right here.
Cool.
I appreciate you reaching out and providing the opportunity to just kind of discuss some stuff. That was good.
Great conversation. Do you have any any last words of wisdom for folks?
Just keep moving differently, and look to inform your process based on your goals and what you believe is important.
Cool. And then, like the idea you mentioned earlier, think holistically.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot to assimilate, but it's good information, and it creates a depth and a richness to the movement and to a lot of just life experience.
Sure.
I've been blessed to have people around me who were able to offer and share their knowledge, and anytime that I can relay my experience and it might help somebody, I appreciate the opportunity to do that.
Cool, thanks. So, hope you enjoyed that, folks. He says, get out, move well, move smart, move like a human, and think holistic. So, hope you enjoyed that, folks, and we'll have other episodes talking about, similar issues, moving on the trails and in the woods, because that's another complex topic on its own that's very important for our ecology, our health, our taking care of our environment. So thanks for listening, folks. Hope you enjoyed that. As we say, get out there and move and enjoy our nature. Bye.